Good evening. Good evening. Look at all of you coming out on this beautiful day, like the first beautiful day we've had in months for poetry. Thank you all so much for coming. If you all could kind of come and kind of fill this area up, that would be great. Don't worry, we don't have a long show tonight. So our bargain with you is come give your energy to the poets, come and fill this space up so they don't have to crane their neck. Looking all over the room. In exchange, we're going to keep the show short so that you can go out and enjoy this fine spring, hopefully, spring day, although we don't want to jinx it. You'll still get out plenty of time to enjoy the weather or go to the club or whatever you young people do. I don't even know anymore. My name is Bao Phi. I'm Program Director of Events and Awards here at the Loft Literary Center. Thank you for coming. We're just one organization in this big, beautiful building called Open Book, which is its own nonprofit. The Loft started as a community gathering space in a loft above a bookstore in Dinkytown, Minneapolis in 1974, and we've grown to become one of the largest and most comprehensive leading literary arts nonprofits in the nation. We have a bunch of classes, residencies, performances, workshops, awards, grants, and fellowships to writers of all ilks and services for readers of all ilks. I would be up here all night talking about our programs. I'm not going to do that. I hate it when I go to an event and the MC talks for like 3 hours. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to guide you to www.loft.org. Check out the stuff we're doing. Some great stuff that you might probably have already heard about. May 11th, we're doing this big book festival called Wordplay. Stephen King, Jericho Brown, Ross Gay, Amy Tan, Nicole Chung, Tommy Orange, and a bunch of other really great writers. Over 100 writers from around the country will be here, so please check that out. Also, this series, Who You're Here For Today, Reed Bobroff is a spoken word immersion fellow, and it's a part of a program we have here called Equilibrium, which is a spoken word series for indigenous and spoken word artists of color. We've been running since 2002, September of 2002. And the next show will be May 4th. Mei Li Yang, who's a local Hmong poet and playwright, her project is called the Dead Hmong Women Project, and it's about domestic violence in the Hmong community. So she'll be here with special guest Melodic on May 4th. And so that's all the commercials I have for you. The only other things I'm going to say is there's a survey in here. We would really appreciate it if you would fill this out, this evaluation. It helps us get your opinion and teaches us how we can serve you better. There's also an envelope for any of you who are just looking to throw extra cash away at a nonprofit that's doing good work like ours. All right, so we're gonna get ready to go. But first, I wanna give a shout out to DJ Knock, as always, in the house. Also to Browntown, who's video recording tonight, and Josh Dairud, who's in the booth, always hooking us up with light and sound. Also Uche, who's our professional photographer, our official photographer today. Also Maren Gomez, our events manager, and then our two wonderful volunteers. Thank you for helping us out. Volunteer means work for free, so thank you very much. We're just gonna get rolling. Sound good? All right. So we have two artists for you today. First up is our local treasure, Marisa Carr. She's a playwright, a poet, a multidisciplinary double threat. She was voted Best New Political Playwright by Lavender Magazine, and she's just really one of the best things about living in the Twin Cities is being able to hear her voice. And she's an alum of this stage, and we're glad to have her back. So please welcome to the stage Marisa Carr.
Thank you so much, Bao. I think that might be one of the nicest intros that I've ever gotten as an artist, like ever. Aw, thank you. So before the show, you guys, I told Reed and DJ Knock that I was gonna do something tonight on stage that I've never done on stage at the Loft before. And I haven't figured out what that thing is yet. So we're all in for an adventure, right? But also, feel free to throw suggestions. And maybe when I'm done, I'll let you guys know what it is. Ooh, maybe. If you turn off the camera, I don't want that on record. We were swaddled at birth in secondhand tragedy, threadbare but still intact. Borrowed, stolen, or passed down, we slip into it like an old coat that becomes a straitjacket, that becomes a shroud. Wear it with the same desperate ache that makes us thumb our bruises and linger after everyone else has gone home in the places that hurt us the most. That makes us refuse medicine for fear that we won't be healed, for fear of not knowing who we are without the chips on our shoulders that have grown down into our bones, for fear of success or failure that plucks away at the possibility of hope. When my brother and I were young, we patched each other's scrapes and punctures, packed them with cotton balls and sealed them with masking tape, always so carefully, because when he broke his hand, my fist used to ache. This is how I know that when you close a wound that's never been cleaned, it festers and burns. We've learned to wear scars with cockeyed smiles that pop up on autopilot when friends or bold strangers ask, "What the hell happened to you?" And crack uncomfortable jokes and laugh too loud so they'll know that we have nothing to hide, that the railroad tracks of tissue that traverse our limbs are too old to matter, that they stopped hurting years ago, that we're fine. But sometimes they still keep me up at night. It didn't happen to me, but I heard the stories. They say forgiveness brings peace, but peace is fickle. He never stays for long. So we go to bed early, stay up all night, empty bottles, fill pipes, do yoga, go to meetings, cut wrists, go to the gym, stay home, stay away, pop pills, meditate, look for ways out from under old hurts that seep like South Minneapolis arsenic into the soil that nourishes our roots. Maybe we can't help it that we poison the very things that we try to sustain. Prick fingers as we try to stitch up the threads of our lives. Someone's child will carry this one day, slip into it like an old coat and say, it didn't happen to them, but they heard our stories. Oh, thank you. I am on a time limit, and I do want to respect what Bao said about not keeping you guys here all night. Also, I'm low-key trying to go get ice cream after this. Not low-key anymore. It was low-key. Now the key has just been turned way up. So I'm going to read something for you guys. It's not new. I wrote it a couple years ago, maybe a year and a half, but it's the first time that I'm reading it publicly. So technically that kind of counts as doing something for the first time on the EQ stage, but not really, because I'm still trying to go bigger. So, if you got ideas, shout them out. I'm here for it. I heard you say beatbox. There's still plenty of time left. I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying yes. So this is called A Day During the Week Following an Attack of Domestic Terrorism on U.S. Soil. 6:30. My alarm goes off and I'm not ready. I saw a mouse in my apartment yesterday and it kept me up all night because I knew it was there lurking, biding its time. That fucker has to go. Brush teeth, gym clothes, water bottle, shoes, headphones, and I'm out the door. 6:55. The lady at the front desk at the Y scans my card. She's friendly, as always, even though it's early as shit. She's white. But the mission of the YWCA is eliminating racism, empowering women. So very unlikely that she's a Nazi. Time to lift. 7:45, workout over. I walk up the steps to my apartment. A brown lady I don't recognize is sitting on the stoop smoking. As I put my key in the security door, she says, "Está abierta." She has the door propped open at the bottom. This is how the fucking mice get in. Definitely not a Nazi, though. I mumble gracias and stumble in. I had midnight cake last night while I was thinking about the mouse. It was a hard workout. 8:15, after a quick shower and change, I head to work. My coworker is already there. She and I are always the first two people to get in the morning. She is white, but she's been working in the Native community for years, and I'm quite sure she's not a Nazi. 10 o'clock, meeting with my grant manager. We go over my budget revisions, and she shows me pictures of her kid on her phone. He is very, very cute. She's really, really committed to fighting for racial equity. Also, she's black. So again, definitely not a Nazi. So far, so good. 10:30, I head to the bathroom. I'm really, really trying to stay hydrated lately and pass a couple visiting auditors. They're both young white men wearing polo shirts who don't smile much. I'm not saying they're Nazis, but I'm also not saying they're not Nazis. I really have no way of knowing. In the bathroom, I study my face in the mirror as I wash my hands. Yep, definitely still brown. 1 o'clock, lunch break. I eat some chickpea tuna salad that my friend, also not a Nazi, I'm pretty sure, gave me the recipe for, browse emails, and check out a link to an old friend's band. He's white, but he's definitely not a Nazi, I think. Anyway, he plays in a crust band now. Crust punks have a lot of problems, but Nazism isn't typically one of them. 2:30. I go outside to grab something from my car, and I run to catch the elevator when I get back into the building. One of the polo shirts steps in, and I think he sees me, but he doesn't hold the door. I'm not saying he's a Nazi, but it was a little rude. Anyway, yesterday was leg day, so I'm obviously not climbing 3 flights of stairs. I wait for the elevator to come back down. 3:45. My work bestie stops by my office to check in about our program budgets and talk shit about her twins beating my Brewers last week. She's half German, but she's also a quarter Native, a quarter Mexican, and 100% gay. Definitely not a Nazi. 5 o'clock, off work. I drive to the Joanne Fabrics in Edina to buy some material to finish one of the quilts I'm trading to a friend who plays in a goth band, but I'm 100% sure is not a Nazi, for a sweet guitar, a Gretsch Electromatic. I take a number and stand in line at the cutting counter, but when my number comes up and I step forward with my bolt of fabric, the old white lady at the counter starts helping someone who is not me, who has not been there as long as I have, who is also white. Excuse me, ma'am, I'm number 77. Well, I'm helping someone else, so you'll just have to step back and wait your turn. This woman snaps at me, even though it is literally my turn. Okay, this woman might legit be a Nazi, or at least Nazi sympathetic. The woman she's helping hasn't said anything either. If it were me, I would be like, "Oh, sorry about that, you go ahead," or something, so maybe she's a Nazi too. I go to another counter and ask for a manager. 6 o'clock. I'm almost home, but I stop at the bougie grocery store. I like it there because there are always free samples of fancy cheese, and surprisingly, everyone there is always really nice to me. Nobody there has ever insisted on checking my bag when no one else in the store was having their bag checked, like they did at the Walgreens that used to be next door, or accused me of stealing and called the police like they did at the Mall of America that one time. Nobody there has ever not been willing to help me when it was my turn. I don't think anyone there is a Nazi. But if I'm honest, sometimes I get a little nervous before I walk in the door there. I think, Is today the day that something happens that ruins this grocery store for me? Anyway, I pick up some herbal tea and a bottle of peppermint essential oil. According to the internet, mice hate peppermint. 6:30, I'm home. I just put a bunch of laundry away, and now I'm drizzling peppermint oil around the baseboards of my apartment. It smells like a candy cane factory blew up, and it's making my eyes water a little bit. I am making my apartment great again. I briefly wonder if my commitment to purging my home of these mice makes me like a Nazi. Nah, I decide. I think I'm okay. 8 o'clock, phone rings. It's my dad. He is definitely not a Nazi. He's calling to tell me that he's finally caught up on Game of Thrones. So am I. After we hang up, I think about my parents. My mom is definitely not a Nazi, but she is Sicilian. And my dad is Ojibwe Black. Will they be safe? Nazis are getting bold out there, and if there's one thing they hate, it's race mixing. But no, my mom and dad are pretty badass, so they'll probably be fine. I think. I hope. 8:45. I'm online looking to see what's going on in Milwaukee this weekend when I travel home. I see an article about a band fronted by someone I knew when I was a teenager in the punk scene. He was the first person ever to call me a nigger to my face. He was definitely a Nazi. That was 15 years ago. I wonder if he's grown as a human being since then. Do people grow out of being Nazis? 10 o'clock. I'm in bed in my PJs reading on my Kindle. The book is about a magical race of bird people who were at war with a magical race of dragon people, but now they're coming together to save the world. There's only one human character, and she is definitely not a Nazi. I wonder if that fucking mouse is still out there in my apartment. I wonder if I will sleep tonight. Thanks. Thank you. This is going to be my last one, so if anybody thinks of something that I've never done on stage at the Loft before that you would like to see me do, it's getting like pretty down to the wire. I will freely disclose that I did fart while I was reading that, which maybe I've never done on stage here before. I'm not sure. But I'm willing to count it if you guys are.
I second the beatboxing.
You second the beatboxing. Okay. All right, I can't do a handstand. I appreciate the thought. It is not something I'm physically capable of. All right, I'll beatbox, but it's gonna be really, can you turn off the camera for like 30 seconds? Okay, you can roll again now. Wow, thanks. You guys are such a great audience. Like, small but mighty. Okay, this is gonna be my last piece, but then when I'm done, are you guys ready to give it up for Reed Adair Bobroff? It sounds like you guys are kind of ready, but can you like, if you guys are at like a 6 right now, could we get it up to like an 8.5? Can you guys like? Okay, all right, I'll take it. That's like an acceptable level of ready. Hopefully by the time I'm done with this, you guys will be even more ready and we can bump it up to like at least a 9. But for now, that's ready enough to move forward. My heart is indigenous land, unceded. I signed treaties with no man. I don't need one to need me, love me, adore me, beat me, strip my resources and leave me, only to return when he learns the worth of what's left beneath me. I can't. My heart is indigenous land, raped over 500 years of takeover that made over the earth into someone she doesn't know. Now the color of scarred tissue is her skin tone. My heart is indigenous land, torn apart and carved by chain link fences topped with wire barbs that dig in deep and leave ragged welts and train track marks on legs and stomachs and chests and arms. My heart is not broken, but it's come close. A lifetime of strip mining, taking liberties, and making holes is nothing sacred. Not to you, my heart, which is indigenous land, unceded. I make treaties with no man. Thank you so much. You guys have been great. Give it up for Reed. Oh, and thanks to the Loft. Thank you, Bao. Thank you, everybody.
One more time for Marisa Carr. You know, you hear about the private parties that rock stars do for wealthy people, and they're like no phones, you can't record them and stuff. Now you can say you were at this exclusive thing where Marisa Carr beatboxed, and she made everybody turn off the cameras. Everybody meaning Browntown, but yes. Yeah, see, there you go. Aren't you all glad you're here? All right, so anyway, are you having a good time? Yes. Yes. All right, so we have one last artist to go. And Reed Bobroff is our immersion fellow for this year. He's a poet, playwright, and performer from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He has shared his work at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, the National Museum of the American Indian, and been featured in the Breakbeat Poets Anthology and on HBO's Brave New Voices. He graduated from Yale University in 2016 with a degree in theater studies and served as the Associate Director of the Yale Indigenous Performing Arts Program. And just to tell you a little bit, the Spoken Word Immersion Fellowship is a grant process that's open nationally, and it's a very competitive program. And Reed was selected out of many worthy applicants to be an immersion fellow this year. And we're really glad to have worked with you this year. And you're here at the culmination of his project. So please welcome Reed Bobroff.
Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Am I far away enough? Am I loud enough? I don't know. Well, I should use the mic. Okay. Like right up here. And just no. I got it. Cool. Is that good? All right. I feel like with the brick wall behind me, like I feel like a stand-up comedian in the 80s, especially with like my short jacket that's like up here. I feel like I should just like pull it up and just like, what's the deal with airplane food? Thank you everyone so much for coming. I'll introduce myself. Yat e torich inishle belagana bashichin belagana dashiche belagana dashinale todineshe de nasha do beadila senil de shagan Reed Bobroff yinishe. Hey everyone. My name is Reed Bobroff. I'm, I'm kind of having an identity crisis right now because I'm not sure what my last name is. No. We're all right. We're all right. And I think, so I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's where I'm from. And it was always pronounced Bobroff. That's just how I grew up. I was Reed Bobroff. But everybody pronounces it Bobroff. And it was in college when I was graduating, like we had a dean of our residential college where we lived, so we got to know her really, really well over the course of 4 years, and she was one of my advisors. So like we were really tight, and she asked if you were a graduating senior that you call her and leave a voice message before graduation of how to pronounce your name. And I never called her because I was like, we've known each other for 4 years. Like, I'm sure you know how to pronounce my name. And some background is like my family allegedly, or like this, the lore in the family is that this is not supported by fact at all. But my family comes from Bobroff, Ukraine. That's what I've heard. I have no idea if that's true, because Americanization. But so I never called my advisor, and on the day of graduation, she pronounced my name Reed Bobroff, and that really like struck a chord with me, and I was like, maybe I've been saying it wrong my whole life. Maybe it is Bobroff. I don't know. Anyway, we're all right. So I have a few poems that I want to share with you guys. A lot of my work is around music. I love music, and so music is incorporated a lot into my work. I also am like a huge sci-fi nerd, so I love to think about indigenous futurisms and like speculative fiction and things like that. I'm talking a lot. So that's just a preface, and here I will kick off my first poem. So this is called The First Rock and Roll Song. I gotta take a drink of water because this is the one that always blows out my voice. And we're gonna do it first, so we'll see how the rest of the night goes. The first rock and roll song I ever heard was Green Day's American Idiot, cracking car speakers, crackling chords held tight by safety pins. This was the first time I really understood guy liner and messy hair and ripped jeans, and how having a voice can mean hundreds of people jumping to the same drum beat, breaking ceilings and concrete in any door with a lock. And I wanted to make a song that sounded like that. Wanted to write poems that needed 4 drumstick clicks to clear the air before rebellion. This was before I ever heard Highway Child and wanted to know the road like a tour van does. Exhausted, in love and running on fumes, but determined as a guitar string, faithful as the North Star. And that was before No Doubt played songs about dreams and the people who will keep you from them, but somehow still found ways to dance. And that's when Gwen Stefani taught me that the best place to put a broken heart is in the bottom of an amplifier turned all the way up. When I heard my first rock and roll song stumbling and calling out from the bottle of a bottle, I've been down so goddamn long that it feels like up to me. And that's when I learned desperation, honest as winter or fire. So when I heard Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, the first rock and roll song I ever heard, I learned chaos will introduce itself over and over as a tongueful sinner. All great artists have flirted with the devil, but only the best have returned with the song. And this is where I met my father. Before he was my father, and he was still living memories of road trips and late nights with the windows down and the high beams on, and Bruce Springsteen singing down the rain, that first rock and roll song I ever heard, or maybe it was something by The Band or Santana or Prince or the who's who of music that's come before. The first rock and roll song, that moment between fingers and the right note, which can be completely wrong as long as bodies are still dancing. So the first rock and roll song I ever heard was my mother's heartbeat and breath. My first rock and roll song was Happy Birthday with a chorus of off-key cousins. My first rock and roll song was a ballad of soccer cleats and the taste of copper and ice. My first rock and roll song was an argument in a college dorm room. My first rock and roll song was A Kiss to Erase It. My first rock and roll song was the lock clicking, the bed clattering, and the fight forgotten in the sticky sweet air. My first rock and roll song is still hitchhiking its way here. My first rock and roll song is waiting on the stereo, and it is imperfect and raw. It is littered with mistakes and electricity and lightning and rain and standing ovations and bras and boxers and making love. It is earnest and hard to hear, but everyone wants to sing along. It is hugging a stranger just because they know the words too. It is the final song of the concert and the stage going black and no one calling for an encore. It is that last distorted note on the guitar, and it is perfect. So I really want to say thank you to a lot of people, but I want to say firstly to the Loft. Thank you so much for having me, hosting this event, and generally for this past year, I've been able to work with Native students from 3 different communities on writing who we are, where we come from, and able to support who they are and where they come from. A lot of my work has been around writing to heal from personal and historical trauma. So that's what I've been doing with 3 different Native communities. I want to thank you all for being here. It really means a lot to have an audience. I know you guys it's Saturday. There are tons of things you guys could be doing, and you're here. So it's going to be a good show. It's already been a good show. Thank you to Marisa Carr. Thank you to DJ Knock. Like, you guys are fantastic. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to meet you all. And I want to say thank you. They're not here, but I want to say thank you to my family and my partner just for supporting me in this and help supporting me in coming out here to share this work. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge the Dakota community here in this land, to thank them for their continued resistance, to their vibrancy, and also to the resilience that they bring with them every day. So if there are any Dakota people in the audience, I want to thank you for being here and continuing to be here every day. I'm going to move on to another poem. Like I was saying, I don't. So I've been working on a series of poems called Indigenous Political Science, and they're basically taking physics concepts and applying them to Native communities politically and also socially. So this is the first one. I'm going to read it. It's a little heady because they're written like textbooks. So have fun. No, but they're also like rather tongue-in-cheek. They're supposed to be poking fun at a lot of things, but they're also kind of serious. So if something strikes you as funny, you're allowed to laugh, and if it doesn't, you're also allowed to just hang out and sit with it. So also they have footnotes. This poem has footnotes. We're just gonna make this as inaccessible as possible. But the footnotes are where I had the most fun writing, so I'm going to read them as well. And so I'll just hold my hand up when it's a footnote, and I also might say footnote. I did practice this. I just want to point that out. I practiced this for an hour in my room today. And so, okay. 1. Sovereignty cannot, the title's important. So this is Indigenous Political Science, Principles of Sovereignty, Fry Bread, and Thermodynamics. 1. Sovereignty cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be recognized. Footnote. The first expression of this theory is unknown. Passed between nations and tongues since time immemorial, its original citation comes from formations of clouds. Scholars have also cited the wind cutting through blades of grass. JK, I'm going to tell you that it was coined by my grandmother, quoting her mother while chewing piñon nuts and swatting a fly. 2. Sovereignty is classified as A, renewable, and B, non-renewable. Footnote, depending on who's in charge of the federal government. 3, there are 4 forms of sovereignty. Footnote, there are actually 9 forms of sovereignty, but the number 4 is much more impactful and on par with traditionalist beliefs. They are thinking, speaking, dancing, and laughing. They have been practiced since before there were stars and will last for as long as there's light. 4, the universe can be separated into 2 parts, the system, or nation, and its surroundings. The boundary can be as real as a wall or imagined as the lines between soil and state. Footnote, this comes from a paper written by the animals beaver and muskrat in 1868. And the title of their papers was, Damn, Kids, Considerations for Lodge Building in an Antagonistic Environment. Which comes from Aquatic Rodent Quarterly. 5, mass sovereignty equivalence theory. You guys still with me? Footnote, which was developed by the deity Changing Woman from her unpublished dissertation, I adapt and grow like the land I'm from, mass sovereignty equivalence theory and the formation and fluidity of indigenous nations. That's not real, don't look it up. States that anything with mass has an equal amount of sovereignty, which can be calculated using Changing Woman's famous formula, sovereignty equals mass times self-determination squared. 6, at their best, a system's borders allow an exchange of mass as well as sovereignty. Often, borders restrict a system's reach, though its total mass is not confined to a reservation. Footnote, rejected billboard slogan to replace, "You are now leaving the Navajo Nation." 7, sovereignty is inherent and precious like the larynx or heart. It should be exercised, stretched, tested, and flexed. Footnote, lecture by my aunt pulling at the edges of fry bread dough as she serves families, as she builds nations. Cool. Thank you. I have 5 of those. I brought one. So, but I thought that was a good introduction to this piece that I want to, oh, cool. All right, we're good on time. Okay. This piece is called Indian Time. Hollywood and Western science believe you need wormholes and faulty watches for time travel. But it's really not that complicated. Flux capacitors are excessive. When horses have roamed this earth for thousands of years and will roam for thousands more. Migration stories are gateways. Land is time, physicalized. Understanding place is indigenous practice. Time travel is intrinsic. Basket patterns are portals back to the hands that wove them. Corn roots connect coyotes' first kernels. With an arrowhead, I can talk to with our heroes of creation. I can sing a song and you'll hear my grandfather. I would be insulted by the film industry, but you gotta take pity on the inventors who spent years designing interdimensional phone booths and mystical hot tubs. Do you guys remember Primer? Has anyone seen that movie, Primer? Okay, sweet. You're my audience for this line. Or those poor guys from Primer that had to sit in a box and could only travel back 6 hours. Or the Doc, so restrained by his DeLorean that can only hop timelines at 88 miles per hour. How many people have seen Back to the Future? Sweet. How many people have seen Back to the Future 3? All right, cool. That's what inspired this poem. How many times did Marty McFly almost crash into a wall to preserve the present? Remember how he flew through a mural of war-whooping Indians into 1885 towards a real-life mob of war-whooping Indians? We spent that whole movie watching him repair a car instead of following the riders towards what they were chasing. A much more interesting story. Those warriors dig heels into haunches until hooves hit the right rhythm and the horses are lightning. Their tracks are blue with fire. Grass grows in fast forward and the rivers split into new streams. The Old West becomes 2017 where there's a bulldozer about to break ground on the Dakota Access Pipeline, but an arrow pierces the tractor's hood. Workers look up to see these fourth-dimensional warriors with a host of protectors and politicians armed with prayer ties and legislation, and an epic battle unfolds where the only killed are corporations and machines. At night, everyone celebrates the victory of water, but the warriors have vanished, Back to Wounded Knee to clog the cavalry's guns. Back to Andrew Jackson's desk to break his pen and all of his fingers. Back to the Battle of Little Bighorn, this time with popcorn, to watch Custer's last breath from the hill. Back to the Carlisle Indian School to check out all of the students from class and return them back to their languages, their families, their cultures, and love. As they ride, Marty McFly is trying to keep himself from fading in the family picture he carries. As they ride, Edward Curtis's pictures are fading. Ghosts reclaim their bodies from dust to ride horses through time. They forget words like genocide and raise children who were buried in the history Marty is trying to save. Half of these heroes spend their films trying to keep anything from happening. At this point in the movie, Marty has disappeared, along with the cities and smallpox. Manifest Destiny is a trail of settlers collecting their camps and returning east, back to their ships, their countries, and gods. And at this point, I have disappeared too. Save my right hand where I store all of my Navajo blood. At this point, there's no such thing as Indian blood. At this point, there's no such thing as an Indian. At this point, there is no such thing as anything we understand except for that old story about a silver time machine that once charged a party of warriors before they chased it off into the sunset, and it was never seen again. Okay, cool. I always have I have an issue meeting people who I'm talking to, or like recognizing that when I'm talking to people that they're not in my head. And so I realized that I just mentioned, like, I'll put all my Navajo in I didn't translate my introduction at all, my Navajo introduction, but I'm Reed. My family is Navajo from the Monument Valley area in Kayenta, Arizona, which is one of the sites where I was working. And yeah, I think that was one thing I wanted to translate. But like, this is for Indigenous and people of color, and clearly I'm not a person of color, so I guess we can all assume that I'm Native, but I should clarify where my family's from and who my people are. So I'm gonna get serious now. So this poem, for when I was in college, I was a theater studies major, and one of my senior project was I like to call it one people show, because I think that I don't like the idea of a one person show or a one man show. I think I had someone tell me once that, like, when you're on stage, like, your ancestors are there with you, your community's there with you, like, everyone who's ever touched that piece is there with you. So I called it a one people show. And at the time, I think it's weird going off and being a student of color in a college or being a Native student, because you're boxed into so many places. It's hard to just express yourself as a human being a lot of the time. And right now, at the time of that I was writing, there was a lot of racial tensions on campus. There were some big things in the fall of 2015 going on at Yale. I don't know if people saw that on the news, but right now we had a pretty awful thing happen just recently over the weekend or a few days ago. There was a robbery that occurred in New Haven, actually in Hamden, and so the cops and the Yale police were out looking for the person who had committed this theft, and they pulled over a car that had two unarmed black people in it who were murdered by the police, and had nothing to do with the crime. And the police this time, they were Yale police. New Haven is often a violent city, but this time the Yale police pulled the gun. And there were similar things happening in 2015, so I wanted to read this poem as a way to continue to say their names, as a way to continue honoring the people who have senselessly been murdered by police, and also to recognize the ways that students of color and that people have struggled in these all-white institutions for a long time. So if you have been a part of those institutions, on either side, this is really on either side, fighting for the rights of students of color, of students of all backgrounds and creeds. This is what I wanted to bring. Oh, and it's not going to be like super sad, but it is going to be a little morose. But there's a lot of singing in it, because this piece is titled "All the Same Songs." So I'm going to ask you guys to sing in it. You'll know the song when we get there, just to prepare you for it. I'm just going to read the damn poem. If you remember the fall of 2015, Facebook and the news kept sharing all these videos of black men dying, black students under attack, students of color lost and reaching out to be heard, to be supported, to be uplifted and loved. You only know what this is like when you're up at 4 a.m. again for the third night in a row, not doing work, not writing, not studying, just breathing. And that type of being is just so much work. The sound of sirens is paralyzing and cancerous right now. On a mostly white campus, in a mostly brown city. These are the nights you sleep at the cultural center, reading activist hashtags till sunrise, trying to find other people also afraid to sleep. These are the nights you email professors and apologize that the assignment will be late or won't be turned in at all. They might as well give you the extension out of white guilt if nothing else, because you can't get that protest out of your head and your voice is still caught in that bullhorn. These are the nights you'll think about all of your wonderful teachers, the ones who nurtured your wild tongue, the ones who showed you love as an action over and over again. You'll think about leaving them, or worse, them leaving you. Those nights I hold Danae so close that I don't know if the tears are hers or my own. I hold her and she holds me and we hold each other and we both wonder who we're mourning. Because everyone we love right here is still alive. And that's not something that needs to be needed to be remembered in the first place. So we hold each other, arm in arm at the rally, thousands of us holding each other up, everyone crying, measuring each other's salt, catching it in our palms. We sing. We don't mind. We've been doing it all the time. And if you want us to sacrifice, you won't get it without a price. We don't mind. We've been doing it all the time. And if you want us to sacrifice, you won't get it without a price. We don't mind. See, we've been doing it all the time. And if you want us to sacrifice, you won't get it without a price. You want us to sacrifice, you won't get it without a price. We have each other's futures at our backs, our hearts in our throats. We have nothing, everything, and everyone at once singing protest songs. Since Trayvon, since Nat Turner, since Eric Gardner, since Ronald Hardhart and Wilson Blackwell Jr., since Rodney King, since Berkeley, since Sandra Bland, since Stephanie Washington and Paul Witherspoon, since Mizzou, since Princeton, since Ithaca, since Amherst, since Claremont McKenna, since Brown, since Cincinnati, since Georgetown, since America, since Ferguson, Ferguson since Ferguson. These are all the same songs that we've all sung at the same time for generations, bound to our wrists like handcuffs or blood. But these are also the nights that we crowd cross campus and sing songs and dance, leading roundies with the entire community surrounding us. These are the days we celebrate our history and make no excuses for our bodies or the time we've spent. These are the times we will remember and be remembered for our unignorable presence. These towers will long outlive us. These ivy walls have 318 years of memories deep in their roots. But for as long as there's been stone, there's been music in these halls. Christian hymns and Latin choruses, a blended wealth of a cappella. Somewhere in the basements, the boilers are beatboxing. Cole Porter's ghost is still writing musicals in his old campus suite. In the twilight hours, the Wolsey Hall organist plays Mist onto the empty New Haven streets. Every generation brings new tunes into these old rooms, and we fill this campus with music. Whether it's bluegrass, jazz, hip-hop, powwow, songs of the African diaspora, or the gong and brass sounds of harvest rain. Whether it's Beyonce in the middle of cross campus or calling out Kendrick's chorus in front of the president's office. And let's not pretend like we haven't shamelessly sung Don't Stop Believin' in the middle of a dance floor. And when homesickness caught us during that lonely snowstorm, we remember the playlists and the mixed CDs that felt like summertime, iced tea, and Sunday afternoons. We found those songs in new friends who we didn't realize felt like home. Even if you're tone deaf and your voice is off key, your bones are still filled with music. We felt the rhythm in your passion, whether it's inside the hum of your latest invention or creaking joints of conference chairs, the cadence scratches of lecture notes, a football's spiral, a basket swish, or the measured poetry of your senior thesis. We know how you'll be dancing. These halls won't hold our music like melodies will remember our late nights. The floorboards will forget our spontaneous dance parties, our successes, our mistakes. But no matter how old the stone grows or how high the ivy climbs, we have left so much music to echo through these halls for all who listen to hear. So that's what I got. I really appreciate each and every one of you who came out tonight. I'm really happy to be able to share these poems with you. Thank you to Bao and the organizers and the volunteers and the videographer and Marion. Thank you to everyone who has helped out with this night and just made this a wonderful, wonderful experience. I hope you all have a great Saturday night. Go get turned down. It's like 9. But thank you again for coming out, and I hope that you come to all of the Follow Equilibrium shows. They're going to be lit. Okay.
So Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day met his wife in Minnesota. There's a really good pizza place called Paglia's in Mankato. Really good pizza. It's probably the best pizza I've had in Minnesota. And it's like a total punk rock pizza place, like tattoos and everything. Yeah, in Mankato. And she worked there at the pizza place, and he was there, and that's where they met. So Green Day. I don't know. I just wanted to tell a funny story. Thank you all so much for coming. You're a wonderful audience. Can we give one more round of applause to both Marisa and Reed? Also, I should mention that Moon Palace Books is here. I believe they have some books with the artist's work in it. So if you get it, they will sign it for you, I think, right? They'll sign, yeah. So they'll sign it for you. Again, thanks to DJ Knock, thanks to Browntown, thanks to Josh, thanks to our wonderful volunteers, thanks to Marion, and thank you all. Have such a good Saturday night. Be safe.